Now that we've passed through the darkest time for Contra during the 5th generation, let's see if there's still hope for the franchise. 4 years passed since the last Contra game. Things look dim for the franchise. Can you blame Konami? 2 failures in a row probably didn't rub them the right way. To be honest, I barely looked into the PlayStation games until recently, and I figured they simply stopped making Contra games altogether back in 2002. So you can imagine when I was a little shithead wandering around a GameStop and just happened to pass by this particular title. Yeah, I was pretty goddamn excited. I bought it on total impulse, simply because I was ecstatic over the fact that another Contra game after Hardcore exists. And on a current console for that matter, it was probably the best purchase I ever blindly made. It would be much later in my life I discovered that the designer of Contra 3 and Contra Hardcore was actually the mastermind behind Shattered Soldier. KCET took the helm as developers after 2 blunders. Funny coincidence that one of my favorite franchises of all time has the exact same story of the comeback kid. The gameplay was astonishing, the action was incredibly gripping with ridiculous shit happening every other second. The stages were intense, the music practically pumped hype on its own, and a lot of the enemies were so gross to a level I did not experience before this game. In Japan, the game was actually called Shin Contra, Shin meaning truth. Perhaps it was a jab against the 2 awful PS1 titles? A funny thing is, the back of the main menu shows that it says, "For deep action gamers." Hell yeah, that's a testament to how ridiculously hard and badass this game is. Back off Japan, you've been warned. No health bar and infinite continues for your scrub asses. This was the Contra game all fans had to play. It was practically perfect. The gameplay was fast-paced, the bosses were gargantuan, and it was ridiculously hard from beginning to end. The environment of the game was very dystopian. It would be considerably depressing if it wasn't for the game being so chaotic and music being so awesome. Some people didn't like this, but I thought the grim setting was fine for its entry. This was before the gritty setting became somewhat generic for games. The music was metal as shit. Contra never had music like this before, but it was very fitting for the kind of title this was. Fun fact, the music was mainly composed by Akira Yamaoka, who is most well known for composing the entire soundtrack to most of the Silent Hill games. It surprised me when I found that out, since I always associated his work with grim ambience and creepiness, so him doing something like this? Yeah, pretty unexpected. They added one thing to the gameplay, having a fixed angle while shooting and walking. Fixed aiming was great enough, but this was a real godsend for the gameplay. Also, for the first time, they abandoned the concept of finding weapons throughout stages. Instead, you had 3 weapons at all times: machine gun, flamethrower, and grenade launcher. They also had their own unique charge blast. In a way, this made the game a bit more convenient. A lot of players, including myself, have the habit of depending on a certain weapon pickup. As soon as they die, their playthrough can simply fall apart. With this style, you don't really have to worry about that kind of situation anymore. This was interesting, for it allowed players to experiment against enemies to see which weapon would be best for each situation. There were even a couple of situations in which using a certain weapon was a terrible mistake. Yep, this really is the same director of Contra 3, couldn't resist some fun little beginner's traps. There was also a hit rate system. There isn't really an exact definition, but the percentage determines your rank at the end of each stage. Hit rate only ascends when you destroy something in the stage that doesn't respawn. That includes small bosses, parts of the environment, and separate pieces of all bosses. You also get penalized for losing lives and using continues throughout the stages, since your grade is determined by your hit rate. Maintaining a high rank was extremely difficult. One mistake and say goodbye to that S rank. The game will reward you for high ranks. Maintaining an A or higher meant seeing the game to its fullest. Get a B at stage 5 and you miss out on the final stage. Get a B fighting the boss at the final stage, and that means you don't get to experience the real epilogue. Also, achieving an S rank throughout the entire game, which is near impossible, grants you a secret movie, which is silly. And maybe it's just me, but I believe that's Sparkster he's fighting. I wouldn't be surprised if it's paying homage to that, since Rocket Knight is another Konami franchise. This game, while having a share of original design and enemies, was also a serious blast from the past. It was practically a love letter to the original games of the 8 and 16-bit eras. There were returning big enemies, small enemies, bosses, songs, and they even did a remix of the original first stage song from Contra 1, which plays in the stage that is actually the same jungle from Contra 1 as well. This tune never fails to melt my heart. It's the beautiful seal on this love letter known as Shattered Soldier. Yamaoka didn't just remaster the original song, he remixed it in a way that the listener experiences a familiar track in a completely new way. Just like how everyone playing this stage is experiencing the first game's jungle in a completely new way. Am I reading too much into it, or is Yamaoka a musical genius? For somebody that was able to provide the player so many kinds of feelings through his composition for the Silent Hill games, I think that could have been exactly what he was going for. They try to convey a story throughout the game too. There's the intro screen that shows Bill was locked up in a maximum security prison for some reason. Also, there are a few cutscenes between and during stages. The story is almost non-existent, so there isn't much to say. The one thing that stood out most was that it turns out, while playing Hero throughout the series, you are actually kind of the bad guy. These aliens that have been coming to Earth and attacking you weren't doing it to take over the world or anything like that. They were actually trying to get a relic back that the government stole or something like that. I think it's something they need to live on their planet, I don't fucking know. Besides that, the story is nothing great. And so what? It's Contra. It's all about the gameplay. Shattered Soldier, to me, is the true magnum opus. The game's presentation was nothing short of brilliant. My only complaint is that there's only 3 weapons. A few more, some sort of upgrade system would have been nice. Still, that only hindered my experience a bit. If you're to play any Contra game after the 5th generation, it should be this one. It's simply incredible and does a phenomenal job reminding players why they love Contra to begin with. Around the same time as Shattered Soldier, Konami was working on a Game Boy Advance port for Contra 3. Released shortly after the PS2 title, there was Contra Advance The Alien Wars EX. Wow, that's a mouthful. Konami's second handheld version of Contra 3. Not much to really point out about this game, except the gameplay speed has been toned down and everything sounds a bit worse, which is to be expected. It's GBA we're talking about after all. A few positive things: they replaced the 2 shitty top-down stages with 2 stages from Contra Hardcore. A nice improvement. Also, while the R button was used for fixed aiming, the L button was used to fix an angle of aiming while still being able to walk and jump, which was a feature that first appeared in Shattered Soldier. It's things like this that showed Konami didn't want to just do a shoddy porting job and release it for a quick buck, like most NES ports on GBA. They actually tried to make it worth people's time when interested in a handheld Contra game. One funny thing is the back of the box has a bullet point that states exclusive original levels for the Game Boy Advance. They're obviously talking about the 2 stages they used that were already featured in Contra Hardcore, so this bullet point is actually a flat out lie. While it obviously doesn't play as well as the Super Nintendo counterpart, it's a competent portable game. So Konami and KCET really did it. They gave the world an astonishing installment and made the franchise relevant again. I imagine it's pretty tough to make something that would be able to live up to it. Maybe this is why their next big move would be quite different. 2 years after Shattered Soldier, Konami would give us Neo Contra. Dumb name if you ask me. I had the same initial response as most people when this was first revealed. What the hell? 3D gameplay? Why? Can you blame me? It sucked in Super C, Contra 3, and it sucked even harder in Legacy of War. Oh well, might as well get this shit over with. Oh my god. Never mind. It takes the 3D gameplay style that failed Contra numerous times and perfected it. That is very admirable of the developers to still believe in a concept that was looked down upon already. It also had a stupid but awesome CG intro full of stuff you can't actually do in the game. What is this, a MOBA? It also plays an obnoxious song, the first one to have lyrics. Thankfully they never bothered to try again after this title. The main fix is in the controls. Compared to Legacy of War, instead of an awkward jump, you have a dodge roll. While it can be a lifesaver, you have to be careful because there's a bit of recovery on it and you're left open for a decent amount of frames. For anyone that has played Contra, even a few frames can mean death. You also have the same aiming options as in Shattered Soldier. The enemy designs are also awesome, and some of these bosses are ridiculously gross. There's even a sub-boss that I swear is a straight up reference to Akira. They take the same loadout style as Shattered Soldier for weapon choice, except they change it up a bit. Just like before, no weapon pickups, but you get to choose what kind of loadout you'd like before you start the campaign. Each set is 3 different kinds of weapons, and you can even unlock more loadouts as you're playing the game. About using the loadouts, you can swap between the blue one and red one at any time, but the green one is always a lock-on weapon that you can use by hitting triangle. It's always used for certain enemies that you normally can't attack at all with the red and blue weapons. While the gameplay is striding as well as ever, it does try to have more of a story than pretty much any other Contra game. It attempts to build story through cutscenes full of animation and voice acting. Honestly, most of it is terrible and the acting is actually pretty funny at times.
You're Riser. Bill Riser?
Yeah, and you are?
Well now. Let's just say Mystery G.
Mystery G?
But at least we get to hear Steve Blum sound badass as usual.
You catch on quickly.
The music is actually less metal than in Shattered Soldier. It has more of a techno vibe. It's fitting for the stages, since it's less dystopian, and some of the tracks are even homages to older songs. There's also unlockable goodies like even more loadouts and weapons, including a sword, and even unlocking Lucia from Shattered Soldier. Also a secret cutscene. My only real complaint with the game is that it's a bit too easy, especially compared to Shattered Soldier, and they're more lenient on the grading system. Getting a 98% still gave you an S ranking. Still, that didn't stop it from being a lot of fun. While some people probably complain that the game is too short, I specifically remember this particular title being $30 when it was brand new. So honestly, I don't think the length of the game was really a problem. I was used to Contra games being short anyway. A lot of people don't like this game, and I feel like a lot of people are also huge hypocrites when it comes to this particular title.
And unlike many of the prior console installments, this will not disappoint.
I think it was just misunderstood. But please, don't take mine or anyone's word for it. While I understand not everyone will enjoy this game as much as I do, try it yourself if you have a PS2. It's really cheap and you may find something special in it like I did.